Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Tonight is our youth-led devotional. So we have Ace is going to be giving our lesson, Turner's going to lead a song, and then Max is going to lead the rest of our singing, and then Jake will do our prayer. But again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for coming and encouraging them especially. So thank you so much for being here. We'll go get started.
Let's stand and sing this first song. How do you explain? How do you describe a love that goes from east to west and runs as deep as it is wide? You know all our hopes, Lord, you know all our fears, and words cannot express the love we feel, but we long for you to hear. So listen to our hearts and hear our spirit sing a song of praise that flows from those you have redeemed. We will use the words we know to tell you what an awesome God you are. But words are not enough to tell you of our love, so listen to our hearts. If words could fall like rain from these lips of mine, and if I had 1,000 years, Lord, I would still run out of time. If you listen to my heart, every beat will say, thank you for the life, thank you for the truth, thank you for the way. So listen to our hearts and hear our spirit sing a song of praise that flows from those you have redeemed. We will use the words we know to tell you what an awesome God you are. But words are not enough to tell you of our love, so listen to our hearts. But words are not enough to tell you of our love, so listen to our hearts.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you we could come here tonight to learn more about you and worship you. Be with us as we go to our classes tonight and throughout the rest of our week. Amen.
If you own an alarm clock, what does it look like? If it's like mine, it probably has a button that takes up almost the entire top of the clock that says snooze. Now it will also have a little switch off to the side to turn the alarm off. So when I wake up in the morning and am still half asleep, it's so easy just to hit that big button and go right back to sleep. Of course, snoozing means that in just a few minutes, that alarm will go off again, and I will have to make that decision again whether I want to get up yet or not. I have to admit, some mornings I've clicked that button quite a few times. Mark 16:15 says, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." I think that my alarm is similar to the opportunities that God gives us to do just what this verse says, to go into the world and to preach the gospel. And just like how our minds start to negotiate for more sleep, saying things like, "Oh, I don't really need to go on that run," or if you're homeschooled, school can wait, we tend to say the same things to God. He gives us opportunities. whether it be a church mission trip or even just a friend asking about our faith. But oftentimes, we refuse to do what God is telling us to do because we think that we have more important things to do. Or we don't want to risk looking uncool in front of our friends. We say to God things like, I'll go on the next mission trip, or I'll talk to my friend about Jesus once I'm ready. Sometimes, though, we don't get another opportunity. You see, once I had clicked that button for the 15th time, it was too late. I might have had plans like fishing or running, but I had clicked that button over and over until it was time for school and I had lost my chance. I'm sure many of you have heard of the fable of the grasshopper and the ant. In it, a grasshopper meets an ant who is busily collecting and storing food for the winter. The grasshopper makes fun of the ant for working instead of just enjoying the beautiful summer weather. The ant tries to convince the grasshopper that he also should be working instead of playing, but the grasshopper does not listen. Then, when winter finally comes, the grasshopper realizes his mistake. He has wasted the entire summer and now has no food to eat. The grasshopper sees that the ant was right, and he regrets not taking his advice. The Bible says the same thing that this fable does in one verse. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways, and be wise. This is a verse that my grandfather has used many times when he thought I wasn't working hard enough. The clear message, though, is to just stop procrastinating. The Bible addresses this many times. In Luke 12:35, it says, be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning. In Proverbs 10:4, it says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And in Ephesians 5:15, it says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. As the fable points out, at some point, it is just too late. That friend that you were trying to get up the courage to talk to about God switches schools, or that coworker finds a new job. He moves away, and just like the grasshopper, you missed your chance. So if you think that you are that person who sees when God is giving you opportunities, but always delays, I challenge you to change that today. At some point, we will all answer to God. Will you have been the person who obeyed when you heard God's call, or did you just click snooze? If you have decided to give your life over to Christ today, or if you want the prayers of the church family, whatever need that you have, you can come forward now as we stand and sing.
If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem great all the whole day through, there's a silver light that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and see, my friend, trust His promises grand. Sing and be happy, press on to the goal. Trust Him
think teachers can be dismissed during this song. I'm not sure. Okay. In heavenly armor we'll enter the land. The battle belongs to the Lord. No weapon that's fashioned against us shall stand. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. When the power of darkness comes in like a flood, the battle belongs to the Lord. He's raised up a standard, the power of his blood. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. When your enemy presses in hard, do not fear. The battle belongs to the Lord. Take courage, my friend, your redemption is near. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. You can be dismissed to your classes.
All right, I think we are ready to begin. Glad that you're here tonight. As we continue our study of Ecclesiastes, we're closing in on the end of it. This is week 11 of 13. We'll be looking at chapter 10 tonight. And it's kind of a smorgasbord of ideas that come out of this chapter. Again, he's going to focus more as we get to the end of the book. But for right now, it's just kind of things Solomon is thinking of, and he's throwing them out there in no particular order. Just words of wisdom as he thinks of them to share. So tonight, if I tried to lump it together in any kind of semi-logical way, I would call this Principles for Wise Living. That it's coming from a lot of different angles, but this is basically what all of these different ideas in this chapter boil down to, is that these are just principles for wise living. If you practice wisdom, this is the way your life ought to work most of the time. There will be exceptions, but most of the time, this is a good way to live. I remember years ago when Dr. James Dobson was on radio all the time, and I used to listen to him some as I was traveling back and forth different places. And I heard him say one time, let's turn it on, that life is loaded and it can hurt you. And I think he was talking about parenting teens, that you really need as parents to tell your teens, there's a lot of stuff you can get into out there, and you're experiencing life, but you need to know you're playing with something that's loaded and it can blow up and kill you. And you really need to watch your steps. And he also used to use the analogy of raising teens, that you got to get them over Fool's Hill, that all teenagers hit that rebellious spell against their parents, and they think you're the stupidest person in the world, and they've suddenly become the smartest person in the world, and you have to let them do some foolish things to get them over Fool's Hill, where they finally appreciate your life experience. And some of this is coming out as in this chapter, as we're trying to figure out how to live wisely. Sometimes we end up making foolish mistakes that end up hurting us or hurting other people, but you try to walk the line of wisdom and make that work for you. So we start out in chapter 10, verse 1. Solomon starts this out as, dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. I don't know anything about the perfumer's art. I mean, that's not the way we do perfume today. You buy whatever fragrance you want in a little bottle and spray a little on you or splash a little on you or whatever you do with it. And it's already put together. You didn't have to do it. But in ancient times, perfumers had to go find plants and flowers and everything else to get the right smell and then try to get all that together. And Solomon says, that's great to get a good smell, but all you got to do is let a fly get in there and die, and it ruins the whole smell of the perfume. And all the work that you've done to pull this good fragrance together is messed up by one little fly that gets in there and dies and stinks up the whole expensive bottle of perfume. I don't know much about perfume, but a similar thing, we have hummingbird feeders. Have two hummingbird feeders hanging on our back porch, hanging from wires down at the top of the porch. I've learned not to try to put them on bird feeders because ants will come right up the pole and right down the feeder, and you'll have hummingbird feeders full of dead ants. And I've also learned that hummingbirds don't like dead ants in their hummingbird food. And I've tried to make it a whole lot harder for them to get in there, but still occasionally they will find their way up up the porch and down the wire that's holding, and they'll get in there. And when I have to change that hummingbird feeder, it stinks. It's got dead ants in it. It stinks. And the hummingbirds know that, and I figure it out too when I have to clean this out and replace the hummingbird feed. So dead flies give perfume a bad smell. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A little bit of foolishness goes a long way. Just like one dead fly goes a long way to kill something that's really sweet and you worked hard for. A little bit of foolishness in life, a little bad decision here and there, really complicates your life. And so Solomon says, be faithful in the little things of life. They matter. That you might say, it's no big deal. One little fly, it's no big deal. Or one little bad decision, no big deal. But sometimes our decisions that we make carelessly end up ruining a good chunk of our life, because it doesn't take much foolishness to mess your life up. So Solomon encourages us through this little story about the fly in the ointment or the perfume to be faithful in the little things of life, because they matter. Don't just concentrate on the big things, but don't just concentrate on the big things, because the little things will mess you up too and complicate your life tremendously. That's verse 1. Verse 2, Solomon says this: the heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. I don't think this is a political statement. Your heart will direct your steps. That whichever way you incline your heart, that's probably, your feet are going to follow where your heart is. And you have to be real careful what you set your heart's affections on. Because if you set them one way, you're liable to accomplish goals. If you set them a different way, it's liable to lead you into trouble. So, wise incline their hearts the right way, and the fools get their minds on things that are foolish and don't do anything to help. And I think the little principle that comes out of this verse is that we need to be careful in our thought life and do a lot of thinking before we speak. And Solomon says this in a lot of other places, not only in Ecclesiastes, but also in Proverbs, that the way you speak comes from the way you think. So you really need to get a handle on your thinking and try to be faithful in your thought life. We're going to hit a bunch of principles real quick, and then we're going to hit a long section that we'll look at with only one principle for the whole thing. So, verse 3, even as fools walk along the road, they lack sense and show everyone how stupid they are. If you've ever met people who are just truly foolish, you can't hide it. I mean, you can't cover that up. People who are truly foolish, you talk to them for just a minute or two and you figure it out. Oh man, this guy's a mess. This girl hadn't got enough sense to get in and out of the ring. And you figure it out pretty quick that fools have trouble hiding their true identity. And they show everyone. And Solomon says in another place, keep your mouth shut and you'll be thought to be a fool. Open your mouth and you'll remove all doubt. That's kind of the way it goes here. Fools have a way of showing who they really are. And the principle for us is be faithful one step at a time, one decision at a time. Because when we start walking along the road, it doesn't take much to get us off track. So you have to be careful every step all along life's road and make one decision at a time and try to make good, wise decisions as we're going. Verse 4, If a ruler's anger rises against you, do not leave your post. Calmness can lay great offenses to rest. And I think this is saying, keep your cool. That there are going to be times where you're going to make a suggestion and it's going to get shot down. Where you're going to have an idea and somebody's going to say, I don't like that idea. That's a dumb idea. And he's saying, don't storm out of the room mad. Keep your cool. Don't leave your post. Stay calm. And it will work to your advantage and will lay great offenses to rest. If you can just hang in there with it. Keep cool, hold your tongue, respect your superior, even if you disagree, and just try to stay calm. And for all of us, as we go through life, it just says be faithful under fire. For all of us, we're going to come to times where we're going to have a good idea and somebody's not going to like it. And you can either storm out of the room mad, or you can say, okay, that's your opinion. If you want to go a different way, try a different way. And you stay polite, you stay calm, and what you believe, stand for what you believe, stand for the truth, but try not to blow up, because the blowing up to superiors doesn't really usually turn out very well. Now, the next section we're going to look at is verses 5 through 15, and we'll look at this all together before we get a principle out of this. And let's just start out with 5 through 7. Solomon says, there is an evil I have seen under the sun, the sort of error that arises from a ruler. Fools are put in many high positions, while the rich occupy the low ones. I have seen slaves on horseback, while princes go on foot like slaves. And I think this is pointing to bad leadership, and it can be bad leadership in government, bad leadership in a company, bad leadership in family, bad leadership in churches. It can be bad leadership anywhere, but bad leadership sometimes puts fools in charge. Bad leadership will sometimes give a guy a position that he's not capable of handling. And when he gets the position, he bungles the job so badly that everything gets turned upside down. And it's almost like the guy on the bottom it's almost like it's a rebellion. It's a coup. And fools are put in high positions. They overthrow the people who are ruling, and fools overthrow the government and put themselves in charge, and the rich get thrown out on the streets and lose their jobs. And slaves get to ride around on horseback like they're royalty, and princes have to go around on foot because they've lost all their power. So rebellion sometimes puts slaves in limousines and royalty hitchhiking. And Solomon said, that's just, I've seen this evil under the sun. And it's usually because of poor leadership and somebody rising up who doesn't know how to lead, but who kicks out leadership and takes charge, and they don't know what they're doing. He continues this idea in 8 and 9. Whoever digs a pit may fall into it. Whoever breaks through a wall may be bitten by a snake. Whoever quarries stones may be injured by them. Whoever splits logs may be endangered by them. And I think what this is saying in both of these verses is work is a good thing to do, but it has its dangers involved in it, whatever kind of work you're doing. And especially if it's physical work, as it was mostly back in Bible times, that it's good to work, but you need to know there's a chance of injury, on-the-job injury, whatever you're doing. If you're digging a pit, you might be the one that falls into it. And haven't we seen on the news in times past that somebody's digging a trench and the trench closes in and traps somebody underneath? I mean, they're just doing their job. but there are hazards involved in the job. Or if you're in a quarry trying to carve out big stones, and you don't think it's that loose yet, but it's looser than you thought it was, and it comes and crushes you. That's a hazard of the job. Or if you split logs. I've told y'all before, I'm watching way too many Alaska shows. And, they're cutting wood, they're cutting big trees all the time. And those trees do crazy things when they cut them. I mean, they don't always just, nice clean cut and timber, and they go right where they wanted them to. Sometimes they splinter, sometimes they jump back at you. Logging is one of the most dangerous occupations in the world right now. Especially the people in the Northwest that are logging these huge trees. It's a dangerous job. And Solomon says, hey, whatever you work you're doing, it's good to work. But you need to be aware that no matter how careful you are, there are going to be times that your work is going to bite you. And you won't see it coming. You can take precautions, and it'll get you anyway every once in a while. Who hadn't hammered their thumb? I mean, it just, you don't mean to do it. You don't think you're going to do it, but you end up doing it. And the bigger the job, sometimes the bigger the hazard and the pain. So, verse 10. If the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. And I think this is Solomon's version of work smarter, not harder. Hey, you can hack at that tree forever with a dull axe. And you can make a whole day's project out of getting one tree down. If you take 10 minutes off and you sharpen that axe edge, you'll have the job done in no time at all, and you'll be going on to something else. There's a smart way to do the job, and there's a foolish way to do the job. And more strength is needed, but skill, I mean, you can whack at it a little harder with a dull one, or you can take a little time and sharpen it and use that skill, and the skill will bring you success. And this reminds me, I've already mentioned Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And we mentioned, I think last week, live your life with the end in mind as principle number 2. And this reminded me of habit number 7 in that same book, and it's called sharpen the saw. That there's sometimes, as we're going through life, we don't need to work harder, we don't need to work faster. We need to pull back and take care of our tools, and sharpen our axe, and then get back to the job. And when we're in the middle of it, it's hard to slow down, but sometimes slowing down is exactly what we need to take care of our tools so we can get the job done better. This next one, verse 11, is really weird. If a snake bites before it is charmed, the charmer receives no fee. He receives no life either, but you get the picture of the Indian guy and playing the flute, and the cobra coming out of the basket, and he keeps playing the flute and moving it all around, and the snake is following the flute and listening to the music, I guess, and doesn't strike the guy, and he's a snake charmer. But Solomon says if the snake bites you before you can get it charmed, then you're not going to get paid for charming the snake. That's kind of the way it goes. No need to pay the dead guy. So if you have, and I think the principle for us is, if you have wisdom and if you have skill, you have to choose to use it. And if you can't use it, life is going to bite you. If you can't use the skill and the wisdom that you have, it does you no good. It doesn't, and for us today, it doesn't matter how much Bible you know if you don't put it into practice. It doesn't matter how many verses you can quote if you don't know how to live it. That it's not enough to say, hey, I'm a snake charmer and I have a flute. Well, you better know what you're doing. Because if you get bitten, it's over. And the same way in life, we have to take the skills that we have and put them into practice, or they don't do us any good. We end up in trouble just like the guy who doesn't know how to charm the snake. So, Solomon's principle here. 12 through 14. Words from the mouth of the wise are gracious, but fools are consumed by their own lips. At the beginning, their words are folly. At the end, they are wicked madness. And fools multiply words. No one knows what is coming. Who can tell someone else what will happen after them? And I think the principle that he's trying to share here is be wise about the way you share your wisdom. It's a good thing to have wisdom, but you got to be careful about how you share that with other people. If you just spend your time bragging about how smart you are, it's probably not going to do you much good. And fools, at the beginning their words are folly, and at the end they are wicked madness. Fools end up tripping themselves up. And when they look in the rearview mirror, there's a trail of disaster behind them, where they have said and done foolish things and have messed their lives up and made life difficult for a lot of other people along the line. The fool just leaves this trail of disaster, and they never know when to shut up. Who can tell someone else that they multiply words? Could have said that in a whole lot fewer words, but you just keep on talking to convince me how foolish you are, and you never know when to be quiet. And you should be quiet, because the fool doesn't know and the wise person doesn't know what's coming next. You don't need to do a whole lot of predicting. Verse 15 will finish this section up, and I'll give you the principle here in just a minute. The toil of fools wearies them, and they do not know the way to town. Fools don't have a lot of practical wisdom, and work, just thinking about work, makes them tired. You know, and it's like Ace's snooze button, you know. Fools have worn out snooze buttons because they can always think they need a little more sleep than they do to get to work. And this is sarcasm on Solomon's part here. They don't know the way to town. I mean, it's been so long since they've worked, they've forgotten how to get to work. They don't know how to get to town anymore. They're just laying in bed hitting the snooze button and thinking of reasons not to work. I ran across a little extra on this verse, and it was talking about philosophers, famous philosophers of our day and past generations, some of the greatest philosophers the world has known, including Marx, Tolstoy, Sartre, Bertrand Russell. And all of these guys wrote and had all the answers to life. And they wrote book after book after book of the meaning of life. And what somebody did a study of these guys and put it together in a book. And what he found was that all of these guys could spout what they thought was wisdom, but their lives were a mess. That every one of these had failed marriages, had kids that couldn't stand their parents anymore. They had been bankrupt several times, and just left a debris of people in the path behind them, and most of them died miserable. poor and miserable. They had all the answers in life, but they weren't based on anything that God gave. And they ended up giving a whole lot of advice, but not having any real wisdom. And, you know, education, I'm for education, but education is not the real answer. Wisdom is the real answer. Education doesn't always make people wise. I've known a lot of really educated people who, you know, I'd be afraid to ride in the car with them. They just weren't too bright. And I've had them in my family, really educated people in my family. And I'm going to tell on myself here. I had a brother-in-law. He's dead and gone now. And he was a professor, a doctor, taught at the college level. Those of you who have been in Nashville, Lebanon area for a long, long time might remember the old noon show that used to come on Channel 4 at lunch every day. And Teddy Bart, that name ring a bell? Well, my brother-in-law was on that show every few weeks because he was a specialist in what was going on in the Middle East. And Teddy Bart would invite him to come and sit down and be on TV with him and ask questions about, you know, what about Israel doing this? What about Egypt doing that? And he would pontificate on all that was going on and all that he understood from the history of the region, and had a great education and taught other people. But when it came to common sense, if you knew him up close and personal, you knew that he didn't have a lick of common sense. And I'll give you an illustration. They didn't live, my sister and brother-in-law didn't live in Nashville area, but for just a few years. And the time they lived here, they bought a house in the subdivision, and he did the whole thing, bought a riding lawnmower, and had a front yard that had a little ditch that dipped down and came back up to the road level. And he was on his riding lawnmower, and he decided he's going to cut the ditch too with the riding lawnmower. And he got it catty-cornered across there where his wheels weren't making contact. And he'd spin this way and put it in reverse, and he'd spin the other way. And he got off, and he pushed and he pulled, and he couldn't, he was just stuck there. And so what does a man with a doctorate do in a situation like that? Well, he calls a wrecker company. Well, I mean, isn't that what you do? Call a wrecker. And the wrecker came out, and they just laughed at him. And the guy driving the wrecker said, you know, just help me here. We'll push this thing right up. And they pushed it up and got it out. And I don't know whether he charged him or not. He should have charged him. But that was a whole lot of education that didn't have much to show for it in common sense. And Solomon says, sometimes fools, they might be experts in one field, but man, that sometimes common sense is just way beyond what they can figure out. And I have lots of examples of this with him and with others like him that are really book smart, but don't have a clue how to deal with real life situations. So Solomon, after looking at 5 through 15, this is the principle that comes out of this. Learn from the examples of others, both good and bad. Look at the stuff. Watch the guy who stops and sharpens his saw or his axe, and see how he gets his work done. Understand that even when you work hard and you're doing a good thing to support your family, that bad things can happen. That a rock can fall on you, that you can tear a wall out and a snake come out and bite you. I mean, it's just learn from the examples of others. Learn from those people who have turned government upside down and have made a mess of things so that nothing works anymore. And the people who knew what they were doing are out walking somewhere, and the people who don't know what they're doing are living in luxury. And Solomon said, just learn. Learn from the people around you. Learn from the examples of others, both good and bad. Just pay attention to what's going on around you. All right? 16 and 17. Says, woe to the land whose king was a servant and whose princes feast in the morning. Now let's just stop right there a minute and say a word about that, because he shifts gears in the next verse. Woe to the land whose king was a servant, whose princes feast in the morning. And to me, this is saying, hey, this is where rebellion has happened. And I thought of like Absalom when he rebelled against his father David. And Absalom did some stupid things during his little tenure as a king. And this is what people who take power and they don't know what to do with it, it's what they do. Say, hey, we got power now, we got money, and we've got control. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, let's have a party. Break out the booze. Let's get happy. And who's going to tell us not to? We're in charge now. So Solomon says, woe to the land whose king is a servant, whose princes feast in the morning. That's not the time to feast. That's not the time to get drunk. That's not the time for a party. It's a time to go to work. It's a time to try to figure out how to make government work and how to make people's lives better. It's not a time for you to party. But Solomon said, hey, I've seen this. I've seen the land where those who don't know how to run things have taken control. And they're, by 9 o'clock in the morning, they're drunk. They don't know what they're doing. And in verse 17 says, blessed is the land whose king is of noble birth, and whose princes eat at a proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. And so he's saying, hey, I'd rather see people who know how to run government and work hard all day. And then if they want to celebrate in the evening for their hard work and their accomplishments, go for it. But don't be partying in the morning before you've done anything. Accomplish something. Do something good. Lead, serve. And then you can slow down and enjoy the fruit of the job. So the real wise people are wise enough to know that there's a time to work and there's a time to celebrate. Where the foolish, it's always time to party. Verse 18, through laziness the rafters sag. Because of idle hands, the house leaks. Now, this can be a personal thing, like to households, or it can still refer to government, like the previous verses. And, I wouldn't make it go either way. It could go either way. When leaders fail to do proper maintenance, their kingdoms will fall apart. That there are things that every business, that every government, that every person has to do. You have to take care of maintenance, or a little problem will become a big problem. That you need to catch it while it's a little problem and work and fix it. And if you are not smart enough to do that, your little problem will become a big problem. That through laziness, the rafters will sag, and before long, they'll sag enough that the house will start leaking. And then that creates even more problems, and you go from there. So when leaders fail to do proper maintenance, their kingdoms will fall. Wise people fix little problems before they become big problems. 19. We're about done. This sounds like what Solomon has said 2 or 3 times already. And he just reminds us that life is hard, but hey, try to have fun where you can. A feast is made for laughter. Wine makes life merry. And money's the answer for everything. That sound like our society today? It's more examples of foolish leadership, I think, that, let's party. I'm really happy when we're partying. I'm really happy when the booze is flowing. And that makes my life pretty good. And hey, who's paying for this? It doesn't matter. Money answers everything. If I need to tax people more, I tax people more. It doesn't matter. It's just money. And money solves all the problems. And so we go from there. Final verse. Do not revile the king even in your thoughts, or curse the rich in your bedroom, because a bird in the sky may carry your words, and a bird on the wing may report what you say. When I was just a young teenager, my grandfather died, and my grandmother came and lived at our house for a year and a half while she was trying to figure out where she was going to go, what she was going to do. So I got really close to her during that time. I was a latchkey kid, so I came home from school every day to an empty house, and Mom and Dad both worked. And sometimes my older sister was at a different school, and she didn't get home until after I did. So I just came home alone a whole lot and just went on about my business, did homework or went out and played or whatever. But during that year and a half that my grandmother was there was somebody at home when I got home. And I had never had a grandmother as close as her. So some days I would take advantage of it, and instead of throwing my books down and running outside and playing, I'd just sit down and talk to Granny a while. And interesting conversations came out of that, but I remember one day she told me something. She said, and I don't remember even exactly what it was, but it was something like, I heard you're doing really well in school. And I said, who told you that? And she said, a little bird told me. And that's the first time I'd heard that phrase, a little bird told me. And I thought, well, I've had parakeets. I've killed about 8 of them trying to get them to talk. I can't even get them to live, much less to talk. And you got a little bird talking to you and telling you how I'm doing in school? But that was her line. A little bird told me. And it was years later before I realized she was quoting scripture to me. That people know things that you don't know they know. And Solomon is giving the advice here that you better be careful with what you say out loud, even in your own home. Even if you think the king is not doing a good job on this or that, don't lean across the table and tell your wife, because a little bird will fly over and tell the king and you'll be in trouble. Be careful, because a little bird will hear what you say and pass it along. And it'll get where you never wanted it to go. So he's saying, be careful with your talk. Be careful what you say, because it has a way of coming back to you and biting you. Yeah. Okay. Two can keep a secret if one of them is dead. I don't know if that's in the Bible, but it's probably true. It's probably true. Two can keep a secret if one of them's dead, because information tends to spread. And I think that's exactly what Solomon is saying in this verse. Be really careful what you say out loud, because the person that you never wanted to hear it, and it happens in our conversations, it happens in arguments, that you don't tell them I said this about them, and then you tell them, and the next thing you know, they know too. And you didn't tell them, but somebody did, and that little bird is comes in a lot of different kinds of packages. But you just have to be really, really careful about what you say, especially if it's not complimentary toward people in power. Or if you don't mean for somebody else to hear it, you're better off not saying it, because it will get out. I'm going to tell you this, but you got to promise not to tell anybody else. Well, they always tell somebody else, and they tell them with the same thing. Hey, I heard this. I'm going to tell you this, but you got to promise not to tell anybody. And it just spreads down the line with everybody promising not to tell anybody else. And that's the bird just flying on with information that you didn't mean to be out there. So the message of these last 5 verses, 16 through 20, I think looks like this. Be faithful with your responsibilities. If you're a leader, be a good leader. If you're a friend, be a good friend. Be careful how you talk about others. If you're a worker, be a good worker. Do your job. Work smart. We all have responsibilities. And be faithful in the little things, and you'll be entrusted with more. Jesus taught that. And we'll be given more freedom and more responsibility as we exercise wisdom. And that's wisdom from Solomon. And I believe it's the truth. It's hard to live, but I believe it's the truth. Next week we'll look at chapter 11. And then we'll have one more week to look at chapter 12. And then we're done with this and on to our summer series, which be advertisement coming out here in the next week or so about all the speakers Adam has lined up for us to come and share with us on each Wednesday night. And I hope you'll make plans to be a part of that beginning in 3 weeks. Okay? Let me close this with a prayer, and we will be done for this evening. Father, just thank you again for the power of your word, and thank you that you have preserved it for us over the centuries and have kept it intact to guide our lives. Father, give us the wisdom to read, to study, to understand, to put into practice the laws and principles that you have laid out for us to have good lives here on this earth. We realize that we live in an environment that's totally unpredictable, that anything can happen anytime, but we know that you are faithful and that you know each one of us by name and that you are with us no matter what we have to go through. And we thank you so much for that. Just pray that you'll give us the strength to hold on to you no matter what storms we might go through, and give us wisdom as we walk through this life. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you.